For most people, a five-star resort is the epitome of luxury, a place where all your worries fade away, and the only thing that matters is relaxation. But for Emily, a simple woman who had always preferred a quieter, more modest lifestyle, this kind of luxury was unfamiliar. She wasn't interested in designer clothes or flashy accessories. To her, a beautiful view and a peaceful getaway with her husband were all she needed. Emily's husband, Daniel, was a different story. He was a billionaire, a highly successful entrepreneur whose wealth allowed them to experience a life that most could only dream of. But despite his success, Daniel had never flaunted his wealth. He valued simplicity, humility, and, above all, the people he loved. He had married Emily for who she was, not for any of the wealth or status that came with his name. That afternoon they arrived at the five-star resort for a much-needed break. Emily had been looking forward to it for weeks. She had chosen a modest dress, something simple and comfortable to match the tranquil setting. It was exactly the kind of place where she thought they could just relax and enjoy each other's company. But what happened next would leave her stunned. As they approached the front desk, the receptionist's smile was polite, but it quickly turned into a look of disbelief when she saw Emily's attire. She scanned Emily up and down, then turned her gaze toward Daniel. "I'm sorry, sir," she said in a cold tone, "but we have a strict dress code for guests entering this area. I'm afraid your wife cannot enter the resort dressed like that." Emily's stomach dropped. She had never felt so out of place before. She had expected a warm welcome, not to be turned away based on how she looked. The receptionist's words stung, but it wasn't just the judgment. It was the assumption that she didn't belong. Daniel, noticing the shift in the atmosphere, stepped forward with a calm yet firm expression. "Is there a problem here?" he asked, his voice low, but carrying an authority that instantly commanded attention. The receptionist hesitated, clearly caught off guard by his presence. The situation was about to take an unexpected turn. The receptionist quickly regained her composure, but the tension in the air was palpable. Her eyes flickered between Daniel and Emily, unsure how to proceed. She had made her judgment, and it was clear she wasn't used to anyone challenging the rules she so rigidly upheld. I'm afraid our policy is strict, sir," she stammered, glancing at Emily's simple summer dress again. "We have a high standard of attire here, and your wife's outfit doesn't meet the requirements." Emily felt her face flush, not with embarrassment but with frustration. She wasn't used to being treated this way, especially not in a place where she had expected warmth and hospitality. Her eyes darted to Daniel, who was still standing calmly beside her, his presence alone beginning to shift the dynamic in the room. Daniel didn't react with anger or irritation, but rather with quiet authority. "I understand the importance of a dress code," he said, his voice calm but unwavering, "but I think we can both agree that this is a bit of an overreaction." His words were measured, but there was a weight to them that made the receptionist squirm. The receptionist hesitated for a moment, clearly unsure of how to handle the situation. The hotel, known for its impeccable service, had clearly failed in this instance. She had assumed Emily's worth based on her simple attire, and now the realization was starting to dawn on her that she had misjudged the situation. "You're absolutely right, sir," she said, her tone becoming apologetic but still laced with uncertainty. "I'm sorry for the misunderstanding. I'll get the manager to resolve this immediately." But before she could call for the manager, Emily spoke up, her voice quiet but firm. "This isn't just about the dress code," she said, looking the receptionist directly in the eye. "It's about being treated with respect no matter what I wear." Her words hung in the air, and the receptionist, now visibly uncomfortable, looked away. Daniel, sensing the shift in the room, placed a reassuring hand on Emily's shoulder. He knew how much this meant to her. Not the judgment she had faced, but the lesson that everyone deserved to be treated with dignity, regardless of appearance. Just then, the hotel manager arrived. He was dressed in an impeccable suit, his presence commanding yet friendly. As he approached, he immediately recognized Daniel. His expression shifted from concern to recognition as he realized who was standing in front of him. "Mr. Bennett," he greeted with a forced smile. "I understand there's been a situation. How can we make this right?" The tension was palpable, and it was clear the situation was far from over. The manager's forced smile did little to alleviate the tension that still hung in the air. His eyes flicked between Daniel and Emily, and it was clear that he recognized the gravity of the situation as soon as he saw who was standing before him. Daniel Bennett wasn't just any guest, he was the owner of several properties, including this luxurious resort. What had started as a simple mistake now seemed like a far more serious issue. "I'm terribly sorry, Mr. Bennett," the manager began, his tone apologetic but rushed. "I wasn't aware of the circumstances. I'll make sure this is sorted immediately." Daniel raised a hand to stop him. "It's not about making it right," he said, his voice still calm but carrying a weight that demanded attention. "It's about the fact that my wife was treated with disrespect purely because of her appearance." He glanced over at Emily, his gaze softening for a moment. "She's been turned away without reason, and that's unacceptable." Emily stood quietly, her arms crossed loosely over her chest, her face composed but her heart racing. She had always avoided drama, always preferred to blend into the background, but this moment had forced her to realize that standing up for herself wasn't about making a scene. It was about ensuring that others were treated as equals, no matter their status or their clothing. The manager, now visibly uncomfortable, glanced at the receptionist who had made the initial judgment. "I see," he said slowly. "This is completely out of line. I'll take full responsibility for what happened here." He paused for a moment, as if weighing his next words carefully. "I understand your frustration, Mrs. Bennett, and I can assure you this won't happen again. I'll personally ensure that our staff is properly trained to treat every guest with the respect they deserve." Daniel nodded, his expression hardening slightly. "I appreciate that, but I want to make one thing clear. This resort is built on hospitality and inclusivity, not exclusion based on appearance. I expect that policy to be reflected in the way every guest is treated from now on." The manager nodded quickly, his gaze dropping to the floor. "Of course, Mr. Bennett. I assure you this won't be overlooked. We will take immediate action." Emily felt a sense of quiet relief. The apology, while sincere, couldn't erase the sting of the judgment she had felt. But what mattered now was that the manager had understood the seriousness of the situation, and the change he promised to implement would help ensure no one else faced the same treatment. Daniel turned to Emily, offering a small but reassuring smile. "You were right, love. Everyone deserves to be treated with respect, no matter who they are." As they walked toward their suite, Emily felt a new sense of empowerment. She had not only stood up for herself, but had also opened the door for change. She wasn't just a passive participant in her own life. She was a voice for fairness and dignity, and in that moment she knew that her worth was never determined by anyone's assumptions. It was something that could never be taken away. As Emily and Daniel entered their suite, the weight of the situation began to settle, but Emily could not fully shake the frustration she had felt earlier. She had never been one to seek attention, especially not in situations like this, but being judged so harshly for something as superficial as her attire was difficult to ignore. The fact that she had been turned away from a luxury resort by someone who didn't even take the time to understand her worth left a mark on her. Daniel, sensing the heaviness in the air, placed his suitcase down and turned to face her. His eyes were filled with empathy, yet his voice remained calm and reassuring. "You did great, love," he said softly, his hand gently resting on her shoulder. "I'm proud of how you handled everything." Emily gave him a faint smile but didn't immediately respond. The sting from the receptionist's words lingered. And it wasn't just the denial of entry. It was the feeling of being reduced to nothing more than the clothes she wore, something she had never expected to encounter in a place that was supposed to be about relaxation and escape. "I've never been treated like that before," she said, her voice quiet but steady. "I'm used to people seeing me for who I am, not judging me based on my clothes or appearance." Daniel nodded, walking over to the window. "It's a sad reality. So many people get stuck in these assumptions, thinking they can judge a person's worth based on what's on the outside. But you've shown them, Emily, that that's not what matters." Emily walked to the window, standing beside him. They both looked out at the sprawling view, but her mind was far from the picturesque scene before her. She couldn't stop thinking about how quickly others could be dismissed, how easily they could be pushed aside simply for not fitting someone else's expectations. After a long silence, Emily turned to him. "I think I've learned something important today. It's not just about the hotel or the judgment I faced. It's about making sure people understand that no matter how simple or modest someone may seem, they deserve the same respect as anyone else." Daniel smiled at her, a warm, proud look in his eyes. "Exactly, and that's why I married you." She gave him a small smile in return, feeling a sense of quiet pride building inside her. The incident at the resort wasn't about making a scene or proving a point. It was about showing that respect, dignity, and equality should never be based on appearances. It was about standing tall, not letting anyone diminish who you are or what you represent. Emily realized in that moment that her value was not defined by her clothing, nor by anyone else's assumptions. It was defined by who she was and how she carried herself, and no one could take that away from her. The next morning, the resort was still basking in the early morning light, the tranquil atmosphere a sharp contrast to the tension of the previous day. Emily had hoped that the events from the day before would be behind them, but deep down she knew it wasn't just a matter of getting over a misunderstanding. It was about something much bigger. It was about the way people's assumptions had shaped her experience, and the realization that she had to stand up against them. As they walked to breakfast in the resort's luxurious dining room, the staff greeted them with smiles and polite bows, but Emily couldn't shake the feeling of discomfort. The incident hadn't been forgotten. Every glance seemed to carry with it an underlying recognition, as if the staff was now aware of what had transpired and what had been exposed. When they reached their table, the manager who had apologized the day before approached them. He seemed genuinely nervous but eager to make amends. "Mr. and Mrs. Bennett," he said with a bow, "I wanted to personally apologize again for the misunderstanding. Please know that we are taking immediate steps to ensure this doesn't happen again. I have already implemented a new staff training program for all our front desk employees, and I'm taking responsibility for the situation." Emily, though still hurt by the events, appreciated the sincerity of his words. "Thank you," she said simply, not wanting to prolong the uncomfortable exchange. She didn't need an apology for her dignity to be restored. She had already done that herself. She had stood up for herself and, in doing so, had helped initiate change that would help others avoid the same treatment in the future. Daniel, always the supportive husband, gave a nod of acknowledgement to the manager. "I trust this will be taken seriously. It's not just about following policies. It's about respecting the people who walk through your doors. This is a place for everyone." The manager, who had clearly learned his lesson, nodded emphatically. "Of course, sir. Absolutely." As the manager walked away, Emily turned to Daniel, her hand gently resting on his. "You know, I never expected it to get to this point. I never thought standing up for myself would lead to something like this." Daniel smiled, a knowing look in his eyes. "You did more than stand up for yourself, Emily. You made sure that no one else would feel the way you did yesterday. You turned something negative into something that will help everyone who comes after us." Emily smiled softly, a sense of calm washing over her. She had faced a difficult moment, but she had turned it into a catalyst for change. It wasn't just about her. It was about making sure that everyone, no matter who they were, was treated with respect. The rest of the morning unfolded in a peaceful, almost surreal way. The hotel seemed to go about its usual business. Guests enjoying their breakfasts, staff attending to their duties. But to Emily, the events of the previous day had altered her perspective in a way that would be hard to forget. As she and Daniel walked through the grounds of the resort later that day, the golden hues of the setting sun reflecting off the pristine pool, Emily felt a quiet sense of empowerment. The sting of judgment had faded, replaced by a deeper understanding of herself. She had always been someone who believed in the importance of kindness, humility, and respect. But yesterday's experience had shown her how easy it was for people to make snap judgments and assume someone's worth based on appearances. She couldn't control what others thought of her, but she could control how she responded. And she had chosen to respond with strength, grace, and dignity. As they strolled along the beach, the sound of the waves crashing gently on the shore, Daniel turned to her with a look of quiet admiration. "I've never been prouder of you than I am right now," he said, his voice soft but sincere. Emily smiled, her eyes softening. "Thank you," she said, feeling the warmth of his words deep inside. "I never wanted to make a scene or cause trouble, but when it comes to respect, I'm not willing to let that slide, not for anyone." Daniel nodded, his expression thoughtful. "It's not just about you, Emily. It's about how people treat each other, and you've made a difference. You've shown them that appearances don't define anyone's worth." As they continued walking, Emily realized how much she had learned from the experience. She had always been content to live a quiet, modest life, but now she understood that standing up for what is right, standing up for yourself and others, isn't something to shy away from. It doesn't require aggression or confrontation, but it does require confidence and a commitment to truth. The resort had been a place of luxury and tranquility, but it had also become a reminder of the importance of challenging assumptions and fighting for respect. Emily knew that she had changed the trajectory of her own journey, but she also hoped that the lesson would resonate far beyond that day. The change wouldn't come overnight, but it would start with people like her, who chose to stand firm in their beliefs and teach others to do the same. The sun had almost set, casting the world in soft amber light as they walked hand in hand. In that moment, Emily realized that her worth was never tied to anyone's judgment. It was tied to her heart, her character, and the quiet strength she carried with her every day. No one could take that from her. And with that, she felt a sense of peace, knowing that she had made the world just a little bit better, simply by being true to herself. Emily's story is a powerful reminder that true worth is not defined by appearances or judgments. No matter who you are or how you look, you deserve to be treated with respect and dignity. Let's stop making assumptions about others based on what they wear or how they present themselves. Instead, let's choose kindness, empathy, and understanding. Have you ever been judged unfairly? Or have you witnessed someone being treated unfairly because of their appearance? We want to hear your story. Share your experiences in the comments below. Let's continue the conversation and support one another in standing up for respect and fairness in all situations. If this story resonated with you, be sure to hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications. Join our community of like-minded individuals who believe in treating everyone with dignity, regardless of their background or appearance. Let's inspire change and create a world where assumptions and judgments don't dictate how we treat others. Thank you for watching, and remember, your worth is not defined by anyone else's opinion. Keep standing up for yourself and others, and we'll see you in the next story.